My name is Rynal Pope, Pope for short, 82 years old, born in Norfolk, Virginia. My family is from Virginia. Uh, Father's side, farming, then came into the city for factory work. My mother's side, uh, primarily fishing. There at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. My grandfather had his own charter boat. Uh, I, as I said, I was born in Norfolk. Uh, Parents separated, went to New York with my mother, and grew up in New York. And left New York, went to California. Thought that was going to be the dream place to go to. So I dropped out of school, quit my job. I was going to school at night, working during the day. Before I told my mother I was moving to California with my uncle who was visiting at the time, which she became very upset about. Really didn't fully find my way in California. Not quite as progressive as New York in its own way. And one day I received a letter in the mail saying, you to report to Whitehall Street in downtown New York for you've been selected. I'd lost my student deferment. And we will not pay for your transportation, but you'll get one 15-cent subway token. And I said, 15-cent subway token is not going to get me from Oakland, California to Whitehall Street in New York. But anyway, I was able to get a transfer to Oakland, California, and entered the Army at Fort Ord, California. And my Army career started off doing just this right here. I was radio and TV staff announcer and cameraman, studio technician. So I'm familiar with the setup of the lights, the microphones, and so forth. And I had planned to go into the Navy. And when I received my draft notes, I was actually doing the process to go into the nuclear submarine program. But I couldn't get everything done before my report date. And the Navy said, well, we can take you 6 years unassigned. And I said, that doesn't sound like a good deal to me. 2 years is shorter than 6 years. Went to Panama. And that's where I ran across, say, not being wanted at a certain place. And what I found out is that one of the individuals stationed there had wanted to go into radio and TV work, and the officer in charge of the TV station kicked him out, and he made a complaint to his congressman. And that, I found out, was why I was held over so long after basic training. The Army was searching for someone of my type to immediately go into the radio and TV business that had this experience, and I had just that plus over 1 year experience to qualify me to go and work at the local radio and TV station. Found out the Army wasn't bad. Decided to re-enlist, get that extra little money, pay off some bills I had accrued before I entered the service. And after I re-enlisted, I said, what can I do to really get ahead into the Army? What will make me more professional? And we had done a special on the 8th Special Forces Group down in Panama. And I said, I think I'll try for that. And it just so happened there was an individual in their PsyOps company who was getting ready to be discharged. And he was a radio TV professional. And he wanted to come over to the TV station to get his commercial station skills back up with the equipment. And we did a buddy swap. I don't know if they still do buddy swaps. They call them buddy swaps then, and both commanders approved. And I went to the night PsyOps company there in Panama. And that's where I got my start. Did the paperwork to go through Special Forces training and jump school and so forth. And the IG told the group that you can't do that. Training is at Fort Bragg. So I found myself on a levee back to Fort Ord, they were building up to push people to Vietnam. I got to Fort Ord, did my paperwork again, was there for about 4 months, and next place was Fort Benning. Did not know that the red clay in Alabama was so hard, because it seemed like every time I landed, it wasn't the 4 points of contact. It was either the back of my head or my rear end. And I think I rode a pillow all the way from Fort Benning to Fort Bragg, so I could be comfortable sitting down in the car. And really, I had no major problems going through the quals, phase one, and so forth, except for when we took the final exam for to graduate the communications course. This guy I met at jump school, we became good friends, and we went through training together. He went through commo at the same time. And they had this radio that you had to extrapolate the frequencies for. And I sat there and looked at it, and I said, you know, this is too complicated. And I'd been an engineering major in school. And I sat down and wrote out a simple algebraic formula for it, and ran it through all the frequencies, says it works. And I used that, and I didn't have to sit down and remember, take the left hand, swing it around your back, and all of that kind of stuff. So we were sitting next to each other when we took the test, and he said, Pope, give me your formula. And I gave him the formula. And he finished the test before I did. When I handed in my paperwork and they saw the same thing written down, they were getting ready to kick me out of the course because they thought I had copied him. And I said, no. I said, I'm an engineering student. I said, we're both smartasses from New York and run our mouths, but I'm the one who, and they called him back, and he says, oh, I got that from Pope. And I said, okay. And I said, you know, why don't you teach this rather than what they got in the field manual? And whether they adapted it or not, I don't know. From training group, I went down to Signal Company in the 6th group, and they asked for volunteers for this classified assignment. Yeah, I'll raise my hand. I was kind of a rebel without a cause, and I was always looking for adventure. I wanted to go where nobody else wanted to go. I wanted to do things that other people didn't want to do, and don't tell me I can't do anything. If you tell me I can't do it, I'm going to do it. That's the thing I'm going to do, you know. I was always on the knife's edge of falling on the right side or falling on the left side with the devil and saying, hey, now you got, you know, to pay the price. And I was always fortunate. For some reason or another, some senior NCO would be my rabbi and keep me in check. And I had two in Signal Company in the 6th group, and they kept watch over me. And then when I was going through pre-mission training for the 46th Company, when they switched over from the 7th group, I picked up another rabbi because I fell out of sorts with the team sergeant because I didn't know what watermelon looked like. I was good in the woods, but I'd never been on a farm. And when I was supposed to make a contact point, he gave one description of it, I gave another description of it. Same place, but it was two different reference points that we were using. And he thought I was being a smartass. And
You probably were.
no, I really wasn't. I was being honest with him. You know, I said, here's the trail junction, there's the farmhouse, and then what threw the game off was he said, yeah, where the watermelons are growing. And I looked, I said, I haven't seen any watermelons. And in that area of North Carolina, they grew gourds, and that was their livelihood there. So I said, I saw where they were growing gourds, you know, but I didn't see any watermelon. And anyway, after this, my next rabbi came and he says, Pope, he says, what's between you and I explained, and he looks at me and he says, where are you from? I said, New York. He says, what did you do? I said, oh, I was a semi-professional caddy. I was an engineering student, and so forth. He says, you've never been on a farm? I said, no. My mother wouldn't let me go near a farm. And he says, and you've never seen watermelon grow? I said, no. I don't even eat watermelon. I don't like it, you know. And they looked at me again, you know, like, you don't eat one? I said, no. I didn't tell them why, but and that was because of certain types of watermelon eating contests that they had in the South at the time. And so he says, okay, and he went back and talked to the team sergeant, and he says, the two of you had a miscommunication. And you both were describing the same place, but he's never been on a farm, so you threw him off when you told him where the watermelon farm was. He says he's never seen watermelon before in his life growing. He described to you correctly where he was supposed to go to, and you threw him off when you started mentioning watermelon. And the team sergeant looked at it. My rabbi was the assistant team sergeant, because we had 2 E8s. And so they talked, and then my rabbi came back and says, hey, he accepts your story. There's a little bit of skepticism there, but he accepts, you know, what happened. And everything was fine after that. Got over to the 46th Company, worked communications there at the C team, and then was selected to work our civic action program, which was we ran Thai Army barge up and down the rivers and canals there. And I was for my time period on the barge, I was the senior American of the 2 Americans, and also the radio operator, and which was the only time I was allowed to carry a weapon because of the crypto. And did that for several months. And my extension for Thailand wasn't approved, so I found my way back to Fort Bragg, which I did not want to come back to. It wasn't so much Fort Bragg. I didn't care for Fayetteville. And so I went off to see Ms. Meyer at the Pentagon on my way home, and I got there and I said, is there any other place you can send me besides Fort Bragg? And I said, no. I said, you know, there's 5, 6 groups. I said, 8th group, I've been there before, you know, or non-qualified, now I'm qualified. Nope, no 8th group. 10th group, and I went through all the, I said finally, okay, what about 5th group, Vietnam? Yeah, we can send you there. I said, okay, fine. They said, go home, and when you hear from us, then you report it. I went home for 2 months. 2 months leave. Didn't even count off my leave record.
Nice.
And so had a good time. Yeah.
Disposable income.
And
responsibilities. Awesome.
became engaged. You know, finally made up my mind that, you know, this young lady that I had met while I was in school, that she was the one for me. And then after we got engaged, I took off for Vietnam. Got to Nha Trang. 3 of us that wound up all at the same place. John Plaster, Yamira, I can't remember his first name. We called him Pineapple. And we showed up at Nha Trang, and we all got orders to go to CNC. That's what it was called at the time. The CNC and SOG were not put together as one entity. SOG was sort of like the tasking branch, and CNC was the operational branch. and got up to Da Nang. And the colonel up there, Whiskey Jack Warren, as John Plaster mentioned in his books, came out in a windbreaker. I think it was a cigar, shorts, and whatever. Rolled back the velvet curtain, and there's this map of Southeast Asia, and said, gentlemen, this is your operational area, which was Laos, Cambodia, DMZ. Just let the stick slightly tap North Vietnam, and says, if you don't agree to that, you can pack your bags and go back down to 5th Group. Won't be held against you. Who's going to jump up and say, no, I'm not going to do that? You know, if someone else can do it, I can do it. And we all wound up in Khartoum together. I worked for about a month in the comm center, kind of got it reorganized, more systemized into handing out the SOIs, allocating frequencies and so forth. Went around to all the units in the area, sterile fatigues and all, saying, I need your SOI. And they look at me, I said, sorry to put it to you this way, but we have to generate frequencies, and I want to make sure that we are not crossing each other on the same frequency, because if we have an emergency, I don't want to be sitting downstairs telling you to get off the air. We got a combat emergency. And everybody cooperated with me, you know, sight unseen, you know, no paperwork to show who I was or whatever. But I think that part was the New Yorker in me. Just show up with confidence, saying you can do it. Nobody can do it better than I can, and standing there. And went back down, sorted everything up, got me a couple of shake boxes, went through the dictionary, copied all the 5-letter words out of there that had R's in them. Those became call signs and code words, and then sat down with grit paper and wrote down all the FM frequencies that we operated on, got them all down each in their little box, cut them out, put them in the box, and when it was time to assign the frequency, that's the frequency, that's the emergency frequency. I said, okay, it's supposed to be random numbers. Put them back in the box and shook them up again, next day, next day, and next day. And that worked out better than what the Air Force did for us when they took over assigning call signs and frequencies, because they combined all the FOBs into one, and it turned out the first operational tasking that we had, I think, with the Air Force running call signs and so forth, Da Nang and us had a prairie fire at the same time. And all the assets were going up to Da Nang. We had a platoon that was in trouble. We had a team that needed help, and we had an observation aircraft that had gone down, and we was there wondering why we're not getting any assets. Okay, I don't know. My first ride back was in basic training. Like I said, I had an attitude about me. I always had an attitude. Don't tell me I can't do anything. My second attitude was, I'm from New York, and nobody knows it better than someone from New York. If you can't make it in New York, you can't make it anywhere. And if I don't like what you say, I'm gonna tell you about it. And going through processing at basic training, I guess in going through the processing line, I had this attitude about me. This E7 called me over and said, where are you from? And I said, he says, well, what do you do? And I said, well, before I came, I was selling building supplies and working at a radio station. I think I worked at the first high-powered FM station in San Francisco, OJT, and had a Sunday night jazz show. I think I had 6 records to my name. And every Sunday I'd pick a different selections from this album. Say, okay, I got those for this week. I won't play those next week, and so forth. And so he got me processed through. That was my first rabbi. And then, like I said, in sixth group, the two platoon sergeants, Sergeant Reynolds and Sergeant Watt. They both looked out for me. They both kind of competed for so I could get promoted. One wanted to send me to repair school, and the other wanted to send me to area communication school. And since I was good in theory, but I wasn't good in practical application, I picked the repair school and never got to it because the paperwork for my volunteering on this classified assignment came through, and I got pulled out to go through pre-mission training. And to me, that's the best education anyone in the military could have gone through. We received briefings from all the federal agencies that had international obligations. That's where I got all my cross training, language training, and so forth. It was a 90-day course.
You had a lot of exposure, a lot of different things.
And so I made it through that and wound up in Thailand. And that training still holds me through to this day. Unfortunate part about it was the only MOS test that I failed was radio repair technician. Because I could not read a schematic to save my life. I learned a little bit later on, which later in my career helped out in some other type thing. But so that was my rabbi. In the 46th company, I didn't have a specific rabbi, but every now and then one of the NCOs would come over and say, hey, Pope, you need to tone it. I used to, especially for officers, young lieutenants, just because you went to West Point, so what, come down to the streets of New York, and see who prevails. Come out to West Oakland, on the streets of West Oakland, and see who prevails, So that's what someone who looks out for you. In fifth group was Master Sergeant Donnelly. When a sergeant major made an accusation about me using weed, and I was on bright light standby at the time at the launch site, and I said to my assistant team leader, I says, you're in charge for tonight, I'm going back down and have a talk with the sergeant major. And at this time was, when fragging was being done, and none of that happened in our program, but my assistant team leader called down to the FOB and said, hey, Pope is on the helicopter coming back down. He's got a serious conversation he wants to hold with one of the sergeant majors. And Donnelly met me at the heliport with a 6-pack. Said, Pope, come here. And then about 2 or 3 6-packs later, sitting outside the club, just talking. Says, you okay? I said, sure, I'm fine. So I wasn't going to do anything. I just wanted to have a talk with him. That's all I wanted to do, have a talk with him.
Probably got scared on that one.
Right. And the next morning, I was back up on the helicopter, back up to the launch site. All's well. I've learned, later on in life, in doing research and going back to school and so forth, what would happen if? You can't answer if. You can't say, if I'd taken this path, that's what I would have done. Because you don't know what the circumstances of that path would have been. You took the path you took, that's it. Whether you took a wrong step or the right step, you took a step. And that future became your present. And your present continued into the future. And it's held me in good stead, both after I got out and went into the aerospace industry and then into the nuclear business and so forth. Uh, I left group and went into the CI world and had equal good fortune there. Uh, there was where I became a really cold warrior. Uh, uh, because I always liked history, so I knew some things even before I got in. I'd gone to school, I don't know if you're familiar, it used to be a TV program called I Led 3 Lives.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, one of his daughters was one of my classmates
Oh,
when I was in high school. Um, and since I was a science major, I used to go down when they'd have science fairs and so forth. And one of the things I noticed, if they had pamphlets, get there before the Russians did, or the Eastern Europeans did, because they would grab everything up,
take 'em back.
and you would have nothing to take back to when you gave your talk back at school to say this is, so forth and so forth. So, and I believed in Counter Spy, which was a radio program on at the time, and so forth. So to me, to fight the booger, which was anything that was communist, that was what you were supposed to do. And that's what I did my ultimate best to do. And wound up one project in particular that was sort of off the books, turned out to be very productive. So I enjoyed it. I observed, I listened. I didn't like being a child. I always wanted to be an adult. I wanted to be able to do adult things, drink the adult drinks, smoke the adult smokes. Being a child was for the pits. I mean, to me, being a child was like being a dirtbag. Really, that was my mindset. And so once I could start doing adult things, I felt in my element. And if I studied something and I took to it, it stuck with me. And that I would use that as my baseline. When people talk about, well, can you operate out of the box? And I'll say, do you know what's in the box first before you go outside the box? I've gone outside the box, but I made sure that, as I tell everybody, I still use Rolodex. And when something gets tough, that Rolodex starts flipping until I find that right card, and then I make a decision. I don't know whether I would call it a good time or a bad time. I'm old enough to be on that cusp between the Depression and post-World War II. I was born before the war started for us, and I went through my early life doing the civil rights era and so forth. I saw chain gangs. I've had doors closed in my face. Still don't like to go through drive-through windows because one of the Greyhound bus stops, you had to go to the back window to get to your food, and you had to pay. And if there were too many buses there and they were backed up, when it was time for your bus to leave, you hadn't received your food, you were out of your money. So that's why I don't like going up to windows to order my food. I want to see my food, and when I pay my money, I want my food right then and there. I think in today's world, I think we should be beyond where saying this is the first black or the first Oriental or the first Hispanic. We are the society we're supposed to be. We shouldn't be saying that anymore. It's, hey, we selected a qualified person. As I had that question asked of my headquarters altar, is he qualified to be doing what he's doing? And my headquarters would say, do you think we would send anyone out that wasn't qualified to do what they're doing?